Welcome back to pixelprojectradio, the video game discussions podcast where we do deep dives and analyze all of our favorite games and some of yours too. This is part 4, the finale of Xenosaga Episode I. We're going to finish out this game. This has some of the craziest scenes, I think, in the whole game, this final stretch. And we're going to see just how many questions we're left with instead of answers. I lost my mind. I laughed so hard I forgot they did this. During the credits sequence, they introduced a whole new question out of the blue. I lost it. It was so great. As always, I am back this time with Nick from Friday Night Gamecast and Chris from Retro Hangover. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me.
Happy to be back. Thanks again, Rick. I'm looking forward to closing this out with you.
Yeah, thanks, Rick, for having me back. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
There were a couple things I just wanted to clarify before we started. First of all, the Zohar emulators. I forget if it was the last episode or one of the earlier episodes. I was not sure if there were 12 emulators or 13. It is 12. There are 12 emulators, and then Marienkind is the original, the 13th original Zohar. So that's just one tiny thing.
Does Judas not have one?
I think Judas was mentioned in there. I'm almost positive. There was one that they used like the last name of the apostle, and I'd never heard of it before. It started with a B, but I'm almost positive Judas was mentioned.
Okay.
The second thing that I just wanted to preface this episode specifically with is I don't think I did a great job of fostering discussion or highlighting one of the themes of this game, and that is accepting the entirety of one's character and past. We're going to see that a lot in this episode with characters mentioning the dark side of their past or not wanting to remember things of that nature. And that's something, that ties into one of the philosophers I'm reading right now is Albert Camus. One of his most famous thought experiments is this notion of the only philosophical question really is, should we commit suicide? And one of his kinds of suicide is philosophical suicide, that of not engaging with the difficult questions, believing only what is convenient so as to not confront and engage in life's most difficult questions for growth. And that's what this was making me think of this the whole time. And we're going to see that a lot with Nephilim, with Junior, with Shion, with just about everybody. So keep that in mind as we go forward. That was kind of a rambling explanation of Camus. I didn't do a very good job there, huh? It's fine.
Sounded good.
I don't know enough Camus. I haven't heard someone say Camus in a very long time.
He's the one must imagine Sisyphus happy guy. That's where that thought experiment comes from. That work.
Interesting.
But,
okay.
Anyway, this is all about Nietzsche and Jung in JRPG land. We don't need any of those other stupid philosophers. So let's jump
Not
into
for
it.
the time being, at least. No, they can sit on the sidelines.
If you remember from last episode, we are still in the Encephalon dive for Cosmos. We're trying to get that data to just hand it over to the government. You can do a little side thing here. I missed this in my playthrough, but you can do this little thing with that UMN bunny, whose name is Bunny, with an IE. And it's like hopping around, and you can kind of, it goes into this little shack, and it won't let you in, but you can trick it to come out by I forget what the item is that you place on this little bench, and the rabbit comes out, and you can run in, distract it. But if you do that, you get this little decoder, and the rabbit also flips its head around, and you see this grotesque-looking face on the back of its head, like Voldemort style. Did either of you do this?
Yes.
I did not. I did not see this option when I was going through that section of the game.
You should Google that face right now, like Xenosaga Bunny, and then just see what you see. It's jacked up, dude. I don't know what to make of it right now, but it was at this time I started thinking okay, this rabbit is part of the UMN network. We're dealing with UTIC, Udo, all of these U hyphen things, and there's got to be something there. I'm sure of it.
It's the Wii U.
Of course. It all comes back to Xenoblade Chronicles X.
It's all about the Wii U. The funny thing about the bunny is that the back face is his actual face.
Oh,
and
is
the
that
front
so?
face is a false face. Yes, because in order to complete that game, you have to avoid being seen by that weird face. He can see you with that front face, and you'll be fine. So that's not a real face. It's just what he projects onto the world. And when you walk down during this time, when you're going back through Miltia and Shion's memories, you see the bunny laying on the ground in one of the scenes, and you'll get a different response depending on which side of the bunny you talk to. And if you talk to the other side where you see the face, and this is the clue for the game, it says, "This always unsettled me, but I don't know why," or something to that effect.
It is interesting. Talk about accepting all parts of yourself. I mean, here we have a great example right here. I wonder how that's going to come into play as we go into the next episode. For now, though, we're going to move forward here a little bit. The gang all sort of reunites. They all meet up. Shion, Chaos, and Alan meet back up with Junior, Ziggy, and Momo as they come across this like tiny Quaker-esque one-room church. We've all seen these like in cemeteries, especially if you live in Pennsylvania like I do. Throughout the rest of this game, Chaos is pretty much going to be explaining things to both the crew and the viewer. Like they come upon this church and almost out of nowhere, Chaos says this: "I wonder if perhaps memories, in other words, events that occurred in the past, become stronger, more selective, and gain a higher priority when they resonate with others that share identical axes in time and space." It's a hell of a sentence.
It's like, why are you bringing this up, Chaos?
Exactly. He seems to be shepherding us to a lot of, I don't want to say revelations, but he's certainly helping guide our thought process. To me, he's reinforcing this idea of the collective unconsciousness here. And what's interesting is Jung, again, I didn't do a ton of reading into this because I can only read so much, but Jung's idea of alchemy factored heavily into the collective unconsciousness. Jung was kind of the philosopher that was also a mystic. Like he was big into mysticism, and the alchemical process going from Nigredo all the way through, I forget what the term for it is, but straight through to the end. That factors into the collective unconsciousness. So it's clear they're playing with a lot of interconnected ideas here. How this is going to factor into the rest of the game or to the rest of the series has yet to be seen, but it's interesting.
I've been thinking a lot about what alchemy could apply into, and if you see our Discord conversations, you see me start just kind of bouncing ideas off the wall to Rick and Nick, and I was like, no, that doesn't make sense. But I think there's something that we're going to be talking about today, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk about it, and I don't want to talk about it quite yet because we're going to be discussing several plot events that really make me think that alchemy is definitely a central theme in terms of like realians as well. And I think that it's explained without being explained. But I look forward to seeing what you think when we get to some of these parts.
I can't wait. We step inside of this church, and there is a Realian that's praying there. Momo is able to tell that she's a Realian, but she says something seems different. This is Febronia. So remember, we saw her before when Virgil died. He got shot, and we saw a very brief glimpse of her, and he says,
"That's right." Yeah.
Right. This is the Febronia, the Virgin Saint that or was it Saint? I think it's Saint, the Virgin Saint that I brought up a little bit before.
Yep.
Yeah. Just, I think probably it's just a reference to the name. I don't know. We'll see. But she says that she comes here to take care of the church because she longed for a place where Realians could find peace. And it's here Shion has these like seconds-long flashbacks here and then in a couple seconds, like just a few disjointed ones, of Febronia getting like eaten, it looks like. They're so quick that it's hard to tell what's going on. I don't know. It's so jacked, dude. I don't know what that is in reference to. Maybe that event 14 years ago that we hear so much about, but we haven't had any insight into.
Yeah, you imagine that it has to do something with her and what happened with Virgil earlier, and the fact that they shared some trauma. I kind of looking at this as like, obviously she's entering this space. They have Realians with them. It seems as though she's tapping into Febronia's unconscious as she's going back to see this event, and she's with all of them. And this is immediately after, Chaos is doing his, ruminations over, the shared understanding of, the collective unconscious to it. But, yeah, it is very unclear at this point, like what this actually means or what her involvement in the next steps are going to be in.
I almost feel like it's more of Shion's memories that she's recollecting on what she saw happen to Febronia. And I think, going back to the saint aspect of Febronia, just for more of the thematic reasons of her naming, when you look at what happened with Febronia, because I looked this up, I'm like, there has to be some sort of significance with this character because it's so It's obscure to the point where it has meaning.
Yes, JRPG homework. Yes.
Exactly. So Febronia being, I don't know what she's the patron saint of, but her background and why she became a saint is apparently that she was tasked to marry the nephew of a local ruler, and she refused. So the response from the local ruler was to torture her to death. And the reason that she was selected to marry this nephew is because the nephew was looking to Christianity, and I think she was pious, and he thought, oh, okay, here's your entrance. You can marry a good Christian girl and become Christian just like she is. And she says, no, like I refuse. So he tortures her, and through her suffering, the suffering of Febronia convinces the nephew to convert to Christianity.
Yes, I do remember this story now. That's right. Chris coming in clutch. Thank you, man. That's true. And it is Shion's memory, I'm almost positive. She says explicitly that she remembers, but she doesn't want to. But at the same time, we see later that Realians do have that sort of ability, at least between each other, to project their memories. We see this with Momo coming up in a bit. So it could be a little bit of both. Both could apply. It's unclear at this time. That would raise questions about Shion, though, as if we didn't have enough of those already.
And I don't mean to kind of get us off the rails in terms of like the meaning of these moments or the meaning of that character, because we're going to have to be jumping into that super deep in a few minutes here. But I'm really, really curious as to like where our writing team is going with this understanding, with this idea that the Realians, or this specific Realians, or several Realians, are suffering because of their faith. Like, how exactly are Realians tied to their faith? And you asked a really interesting question in our Discord chat, as well, Chris, and when asking about, so are Realians angels? And because they are looked at kind of like this perfect being, kind of, they are treated with some semblance of with a sacred intonation by the writer. So I'm just not really, it's very unclear as to like, and we see nothing but Realian suffrage throughout the course of this game. So I'm still parsing that together in my mind. It's like, is there some meaning, like through Febronia's story, as you're saying, that we're deriving from their suffering in it itself? Or it's like, because you would imagine that this whole idea of the gnosis and this like all-encompassing knowledge is the antithesis to what religion means for the society 4,000 years in the future. So like, why are we at the end of this game? Why are we starting to ask questions, starting to present ideas that, religion is going to be held as some sort of like savior for the people that are in this world, or faith rather?
And there is a quote, and like the reason I asked that question, because I was going over the movies again in preparation for this, because it's been about 2 months since I completed the game. And so I was going through the movies, and the reason I pulled back on that question is because there is a direct quote that happened later on that does infer that they are a direct comparison to angels. They are a direct representation of angels. It's very on the nose with it as well.
Okay.
Because we'll get to there. It's near the end of the game. We'll get there today. But the thing is, you may as well be angels. Like, they come out and flat out say that during one of the cutscenes. And so are they, like, if it's too on the nose, there's some other representation. There's some other background to it. And I've been doing a lot of theory crafting with it, and that's why I'm trying to hold off. That's why I said what I said earlier, but I don't want to really delay what we're going on here to, and just kind of move forward the scene. So I'll interject there when I think it's more appropriate. Because if so, I'm gonna spoil like an entire bunch of scenes that are gonna be coming up.
Yeah, please do interject. I'm very curious. I'm not sure if I wrote that quote down or not. Speaking of angels, though, Nephilim is in here too, and as Febronia leads us to this door, Nephilim says,
"The instant you open that door, you will come face to face with yourselves. It will be an experience full of sorrow and pain, but it is, both to you and to us, a very, very important experience."
Tying into that theme of accepting the whole and not running from your past. This is where that starts. It never really goes to its conclusion in this game, but it's setting up that Junior and Shion specifically, although this applies to everybody in the cast, there's a part of them that they are repressing and they're hiding from, and it is causing duress for everyone. Mm-hmm. We get this flashback here. This reminds me so much of Ellie's flashback in Xenogears. It is so similar. We're in a dark hallway once we go through that room. It's like a metalish hallway. Somebody remarks that, I think Alan is like, so this is the chief's soul, huh? There's some blood on the walls. This is the acute neurosis treatment facility where Shion's mom was hospitalized. And it's a little tough to explain what Shion is seeing here. I think I messaged the two of you and I was like, I don't know what's happening here. It looks like there are two people dead on the ground. Maybe her mom and dad, I couldn't quite tell. With somebody else, maybe Shion, laying in bed. And then these Gnosis-like beings sort of phase through the walls, but they're humanoid, like they're shaped like humans. It almost looks like they're zombies. And a few of them start eating from the neck of another where it stands. That's Shion's point of view.
And then they fuse.
And then they...
Yeah.
Oh, do they fuse?
Yeah.
Yes.
I forgot to write that part down.
So there's the following scene here that Junior sees.
Yes.
With Albedo. And Albedo is not an adult form. He looks like a child, like Junior does. And like Guidnum does in the previous scene. And now the only character that's still in that form is Junior. And you're wondering what's happening here. And I'm wondering if these two scenes correlate. Because I think they're both happening on Miltia. If you from that scene we got before, because all those like juniors are running around killing everybody. And this is probably happening during the Miltian event. And again, this is for the very end of the game. So, I mean, if you want to move this around or whatever the case might be, if you want to kind of edit this, what you're seeing with Albedo, because he says some like crazy shit. Well, he was like, I am not the anti-existence, I am the perfect chain. And that's when he kind of goes into a gnosis kind of form. And you're wondering, how is all this happening to him? And then at the end of the game, when Junior is talking to Albedo, he says that he is infected with Udu. And he says, infected, you can consider it that way. I view it as more of an evolution. So what you're seeing in this scene is you're seeing Albedo go from his child Realian form to his adult form. And that is because Udu is, from my understanding, this is when he's getting infected with Udu and he's becoming his more adult form self. And that is what is occurring. So is this also happening with these zombie gnosis characters that are in the medical facility, which interestingly, again, it looks like Shion's in the bed where her mother's supposed to be treated, which is also interesting. So who is Shion? What could Shion be? That's another question that is probably kicking around in a lot of people's heads at this point.
Especially considering she hasn't turned to a gnosis yet, when by all accounts she should have.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what is going on?
Do Realians turn into gnosis?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I feel like from the attacks in the Woglinde, they were just destroyed. It didn't seem as though they were seeking out the Realians to convert them into the Gnosis or, transform them at all. They just seemed to just completely obliterate them, wipe them out. You don't see as much carnage with the Realians as probably with a lot of the humans that are there.
But I mean, we see, the reason I asked that question is because we do see a human get touched by the Gnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And affected by the Gnosis. And then there's a scene later where Realians can hear something and she can also hear it.
Right. The Song of Nephilim.
Yes.
Well, not just the Realians, the URTVs hear it too.
They're kind of Realians though, aren't they?
Ish. I mean, it is so wild, people listening. If you look at the database in episode 1, it spells out a lot of stuff that the game itself maybe doesn't so well. For example, URTV in the database is short for Udu retrovirus. And it says a biological weapon whose life energy wavelength cancels that of Udu. So in that way, yes, they are artificial life forms. They're not born of a womb, which I think is important to note. But if you look up Junior, it says under his entry, it says one of the surviving URTV units, he is a human specially created as an antithesis to Udu. So it only specifies that under Junior. It doesn't say that under Guinan or Albedo.
But yet he doesn't age.
Right. Well, and that is further clarified in the data log. It says that Junior has they all three of them have powers. Junior's is to control time in terms of his age. Guinan's is the telepathy, where he can speak with Junior kind of via his mind, and Albedo's is regeneration, which we get a front row seat to pretty soon.
It's so hard not to talk about a lot of the things that happen in the final scene.
Yeah. But these visions that we're seeing, they kind of coalesce. It's shot in a very cool way. They kind of coalesce into everybody's point of view. And this leads into a boss battle against Tiamat, the first boss in this game that really fucked my shit up. This is, I remember when we first started this, Chris, you and I were talking, and I was like, you were talking about an early boss, and you were like, yeah, that sucked. I was like, oh, just wait, buddy. Just wait.
You know what's funny? I just lucked into this boss being, I won't say extremely easy, but easy. I just kind of lucked into it.
There's a gimmick, and you can look into it. It'll tell you in-game, I forget what the exact message is, but it says something to imply that Shion and Junior have to defeat this thing. So what you have to do is you have to land the killing blow with one of them. It'll automatically heal itself, and then you have to land another killing blow with the other. So Shion, Junior, Junior, Shion. If you do it with the third person, or if you do it out of order, it's just going to keep healing itself and continually attack you.
Yeah, totally lucked into it. I think Shion defeated the boss first, and then the very next action was Junior, and I had a stored up W attack, and it just did massive damage, and the battle was over.
That's crazy.
I wasn't even thinking about that. That's just how it happened. And then I read oh, this is how you're supposed to beat the boss. I'm like, oh, well, that happened.
No, I definitely struggled a little bit in this section. I remember having some difficulties getting through her. But yeah, it was interesting. I do know that it was, the name of the boss is interesting. Tiamat being the goddess, the primordial saltwater ocean. And she's also, kind of represented in, the ancient Mesopotamian, times as, being one of these like goddesses of the earth, but also being this like monstrous being. So it's fitting. It's nice though. They're really just completely leaning into this, obviously the proto-Christianity, Hebrew, religion pulls that they're kind of adding and folding into the narrative as we go through here. But yeah, this was a good experience. I definitely, it was at this point of the game where I kind of was thinking to myself, I was like, all right, we just gotta keep pushing. We just gotta ground it. Let me go grab a monster energy from the fridge and let's try this one more time so I don't total party wipe.
Tiamat, also one of the 4 fiends in the original Final Fantasy.
Really?
Yes. The Wind Fiend.
I gotta get a hold of that Pixel Remaster and try some of those older games.
Makes a comeback in FF9 too, that whole section where you go through all 4 of them. So after we beat Tiamat, we get the most JRPG imagery of all time. Everything sort of fades, and there is a single tree in the middle of a field. 2 Realian kids are like playing around it, playing tag, while Fabronia kneels beside them. Greensleeves is playing. But as Fabronia speaks to us, it's clear this is not the real Fabronia. It's an image created for the girls, those 2 girls being Cicely and Kath. Fabronia drops the illusion as the girls are still playing, and the tree is dead. The whole area around this is like barren. Fabronia is dead as the children continue to play on. So it's an illusion. She says this illusion created by mankind, it binds them in here as they seek to control the Zohar, the humans do. This is all, it's like Takahashi and Saga are constantly giving us little breadcrumbs to like lead us toward where they're going, but it's never enough to really deduce any hard conclusions about what's to come. Because all of it's tying into this central theme that we've been seeing, this accepting the difficult parts of the past. For the sake of these girls, they're not letting them do that. They're giving these girls this solace, but it traps Fabronia in here. What is this saying? I don't know yet. I really don't know.
I kind of did spoil it for myself a little bit. I think it's said, but it's not said. Because I just wanted to look who these characters were. Because again, I was looking into like the etymology of it and why these characters were named what they were. Because I just found that out with Fabronia, maybe some theming. The baseline thing I could find is that these two characters are powering all the Zohars, and what in this scene, Fabronia and Nephilim are asking Shion is, please end their service so you can shut down how they're powering the Zohars for the future of Realians, for the future of humans. And there's a couple things I think that are interesting here as well in regards to that, is that they are talking about Realians as a being on the level of humans for the future of Realians. And these, and keep in mind, these are all things that are happening in this inter-reality that is happening within a reality created within essentially Cosmos's subconscious. You're still in her subconscious. And so you're already told, like, whatever is an illusion to the person is reality, but yet now they're observing an illusion that they know is not reality, that to other people is reality. So now the question is, what reality are they really in? Where are they? And even when they mention we can only be in the real world for a short amount of time, what world do they normally exist in? Is the world that Cosmos is creating, is this an alternate reality as a whole that's constantly maintained, or is this just a situation that temporarily exists that Cosmos is creating for all of them to be in at that time? And if it's a reality that constantly exists, does that tie into the Gnosis?
Or even if it's not another reality, is it possibly another plane? Like we think of heaven and earth, different planes in that sense. Absolutely, yes.
I'm really curious as to see, like, it's because I was very, very curious, and obviously this is interesting to me to kind of think about Cathay and Sicily as like this force that's powering the Zohar, that's powering this structure that's kind of kicked off the course of events that led us to the point where we are now. But just like it, and so did you say like the etymology of them, like what do they represent? Do they have some type of like base representation in in Aramaic or Hebrew mythologies?
Not that I could find. Okay. Not that I could find. I couldn't find if there was any meaning behind their names, because everything was going to go to a Xenosaga wiki, and I immediately closed out beyond there because it mentioned when you would meet them. I'm like, we haven't met them. I am not looking into this. I'm gonna try and find this out later. Right. But I was trying to figure out exactly like what's the importance of this scene, because it's very important that we know who these two characters are. That is very evident. And what your relationship is to them, especially when they're asking you, hey, you need to go to them in order to stop their chain to the Zohar, their connection to the Zohar, and depower the Zohar for the future of everything. And they don't, and this is something that is not, I don't think, adequately explained to the player here, the tasking that is given to you and your party, and the importance of the scene, that's just not conveyed very well. And unless you're really sitting down and really taking notes and stopping after every scene and thinking about, okay, what was I just told here? Because again, I went through this scene twice, and then I had to look up exactly who these characters were to understand what was happening. So that's for me. And that's just me. I'm not the smartest person on the planet, but maybe some other people get it a lot better than I do, but that's how I understood it.
It's interesting to think about too. The database specifically says that Fabronia and Nephilim are connected to an event of Shion's childhood. So Shion is connected to this world somehow as well. It's just, again, it's not something we're going to see.
Also, how is Fabronia existing? If she is dead, what are you seeing?
If she's dead and the real her is sitting there at the tree that the two sisters are running around, yeah.
Well, she also says that's not me, but it is her.
Which would make sense as to like, these flashbacks that we're seeing. Of course, if Fabronia is a Realian, is the understanding is that, you can just have multiple copies of Realians that are existing in different worlds at the same time, or different timelines, perhaps. That could be it.
This will tie in later to my theory crafting based off a line that Albedo says in one of the final scenes. So I'll save it.
Well, if you thought we were done with these scenes, not so fast. Nephilim then says that she wants to show us another projection in space, in literal space. It's Miltia, but it's engulfed in this red light, and then Cosmos shows up with these huge wings and like some light armor modifications. And the
coolest we've ever seen Cosmos, personally. That's just my take. It's so awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. the two of them shoot these beams at each other, and now color theory is starting to, or color symbolism is starting to come into play. Cosmos shooting a blue beam and Udu, spoiler alert, shooting a red beam in this struggle. And Nephilim then tells us, yeah, that red consciousness is Udu. Mm-hmm. That was the source of the space-time anomaly that engulfed Miltia 14 years ago. This vision that she shows us, it's not of the past. It's a vision of a projected future timeline where Udu and Cosmos confront each other. But she makes it a point to say, like, this is just one of many timelines, but they are destined to fight, and Udu will awake soon. So we now have an answer to what Udu is. It is, or at least we're a little more clear than before, it is this consciousness of sorts, this consciousness that feeds on the consciousness of those who intend to awaken it, as well as those who wish to seek it, is what Nephilim says. So this sort of kind of like this idea of like sin in a way, not totally dissimilar, I guess, but Cosmos is fated to fight this thing, and we need to make sure that it does not awaken.
And just, for context as well, when the two beams meet, they pan back to the galaxy, and like the resulting explosion of the clashing of, the force field that Cosmos is sending out against Udu obliterates, assuming the universe. It destroys the universe completely. So it's the end of all things is when Cosmos comes into contact with that, or when Cosmos decides to confront it.
Nephilim will tell us here, she's like, I wanted you to confront your pasts before facing Udu, but it seems you're not ready yet. She also reveals here that she knows that Shion was touched by a gnosis and didn't change. But when Shion asks her, how do you know this? Like, what is all this about? She won't elaborate. She says, there will be a time when I can discuss why. If you go back to Miltia, the place where it all began, then you will see. And at this point, we exit the door in here, and we find Cosmos crucified on a stone cross. She is bound in electrical wiring and is literally crucified. Shion is able to wake her up with the password, ye shall be as gods, that we see in the beginning, and everybody is driven out of the encephalon. Insane. It's so crazy, the imagery they're using here. I'm going to be honest, I think the crucifixion is just flavor. I'm not convinced that it has any real meaning yet. I mean, there are several times that Cosmos is put into a situation where it seems like she is doing something Christ-like, but some of them just don't. Some of them don't go the way that they should. If it truly were that situation, I don't know. I don't know. What do you two think of this?
I mean, the idea is that, if Realians truly are, as Chris said, if they are, as they might as well be angels, as the game tells us. And Cosmos is kind of looked at as the savior in so many situations. I mean, I have been, throughout my playthrough, just kind of treating her as this like analogy to a Christ-like figure. And, multiple times she saves it, but like, it's also the consequences of what Cosmos does has negative implications to what happens to the party. So, I mean, there are a lot of parallels to Jesus. I just think that, yeah, it's hard to see whether or not this is getting too deep in the weeds, or if they're kind of getting a little bit lost in their own sauce when they're making this imagery that we're seeing here. But yeah, I am in the camp of everyone looking, or at least, if we're sitting here and we're interpreting what we're supposed to see, or supposed to, kind of, unpack what we're seeing, I really do think a lot of the time that Cosmos is looked at as the ultimate savior for, Shion and the gang against, this threat between Udu and the Gnosis and Albedo.
It would be savior in the Gnostic sense, though, like the seeking of knowledge sense. Because, I mean, think about it. Ye shall be as gods is a line spoken by Satan in the Garden of Eden when he's convincing Adam and Eve to eat the fruit of knowledge, which, as far as Christianity is concerned, that was a no-no. That was a bad thing. You should do not seek the forbidden knowledge. But here, Cosmos is woken up by that phrase, so maybe she is being portrayed as a Christ-like figure, not Christ, but a Messiah-like figure for the seeking of knowledge. That would also put her somehow connected to the Gnosis as well. We shall see.
I think there's something to that as well. I think it's not just flavor. Maybe it's a little much, It's a little too on the nose. I don't know. Evangelion did a lot of that too, and that was kind of the flavor that inspired Xenogears.
And that's where I'm coming from with this now. Like after Evangelion, anytime I see crucifixions in media, my immediate thought is, okay, this is just like the Japanese, like the Christian flavor. Like that's what this is. So damn you, Anno, for doing that.
But I think if you kind of think of another angle on this, especially when it comes to Shion is essentially being deified as this representation of Mary, because she is the creator of Cosmos. Even though she did so with was it Kevin? Kevin's dead, and this now recreation of Cosmos is wholly her own. So essentially, you could kind of view that as a virgin birth if you want to go down that line, if you really do. But this is Cosmos's mother, who is freeing her from the crucifixion. And I think if you go back into the New Testament, the story of the crucifixion of Christ, I think it's Mary who takes Jesus down from the cross, with the assistance of the I think the other women like Mary Magdalene and Mary, her mother, and all these people, and put him into the tomb. So that could be an analogy to that. I might be going way too deep into this. I think that's kind of the intention with this game too, with some of the symbolism it does. But I don't think it's necessarily just flavor on a lot of the ways that some of these things are being presented.
Something that still bothers me as we continue onwards is the fact that, Shion is dealing with a lot of trauma. We already understand that. We already understand that she's not necessarily the narrator for this, but she is kind of an unreliable protagonist, especially with the way that she continues to avoid confronting her past or dealing with her issues as the team is going on and trying to accomplish their goals throughout this game. And again, kind of to Rick's point, a lot of the questions that are posed, we're just not going to get answers to because they're expecting you to go play Xenosaga Episode II. But again, it is continuously frustrating for me at this point, the fact that Shion doesn't know the full extent of the capabilities of Cosmos, or the fact that doesn't understand at a deeply intimate level what Cosmos is capable of, since she is the creator. And I understand that kind of is in the ballpark of in the Michael Crichton conversation, is that humans will never understand the full extent of their own creations, but still it's still troublesome to me that they're kind of leading us down this road of Shion kind of being this faithful person that's going to lead the party as a good and reliable leader, but under the surface, she's completely unreliable, and she is not necessarily willing to confront the issues that are at hand.
I would even question if her role in this party right now is as of a leader, or just more of just someone with the most amount of plot devices behind them.
True.
Is she really leading them?
Junior really did kind of assume that role, didn't he?
I would agree. Yeah, 100%. Junior is the leader at this point in the story. She has the most interesting crap going on, but that doesn't. She's kind of the central figure, but I wouldn't call her the leader of the party. I just had something else I was going to go into, just completely lost. But that's kind of where I'm on with Shion, and I do agree with you. Her kind of being this unreliable character, unwilling to or unknowing of her capabilities of what happened with Cosmos is just kind of weird, and there's just so many questions that makes her more unappealing than appealing. It's more like, okay, now it's another thing in some aspects. Also, interestingly, as you pointed out at the top of the episode, Rick, there's 13 Zohars, and the 13th is Motherkind, which means that there is no Zohar for the Messiah. So is it possible that maybe Cosmos is that 14th Zohar?
It's possible. Mariankind, meaning the child of Mary.
Never mind. Then, okay, Mariankind. I thought that was...
No, you're good.
Take back what I said.
But if we're going down this idea that Cosmos has some kind of tie to Mary, it could be relevant. All I'm going to say is this. I accidentally, just by Googling a quote, spoiled a big part of Cosmos's mystery for myself. It's one of those spoilers where it's like, it's so wild that I don't know how we're going to get there, so it's not really ruining the experience for me. But I'm really excited to see how it gets there, because it's kind of crazy. And it also gave me a theory about another one of our protagonists, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So, back to some bureaucracy. Remember how we were going in there to get the data recording before we were just bombarded with all of this imagery and knowing ourselves? You didn't forget? Well, we got it. We handed over, and wouldn't you know it, the government is so nice and forthright and honest that they review it and they say, well, this actually checks out. You're free to go. And here's your data back also. And they drop the charges officially. I can't relate. Like, I can't relate to trusting the government that much. I'm going to be honest. I'm not trying to turn this into, conspiracy podcast 101, but like, come on. Putting a lot of faith in their government here.
Yeah, I was expecting a classic Tom Clancy switch it up. They can hand over the information and then they get betrayed. So it's going to lead them down another, chase.
They hand it over and they're like, oh, sorry, we never got it. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
No, they drop all the charges officially. Everybody reconvenes. Guinan walks through the door and Mary and Shelley immediately just jump on his arms and they're like right on him and he's a total fucking playboy. It's so silly. It's wild, dude. That fan club goes farther than just being fans, I tell you.
It's a scene later that makes me wonder if Junior watches because it's like weird.
What is there, a cuck chair?
Uh-oh.
No, it's like Guinan is sitting in a chair and it actually happens right after this where he's like, thank you so much for, getting us relieved of the charges due to the recording, because he gets a call from the Miltian, governor, president, whatever.
Yeah,
he's talking to him, Helmer. And, here's Junior sitting on the bed with Mary and Shelley asleep in the bed in Guinan's room while he's talking to Helmer. So I'm like, I guess Junior films, or is he there for the after party? Like, I have no idea.
Takahashi was on one. He was in the editing studio and Saga had just stepped out of the room and he was like, yeah, let me cook really quick.
This one's for the boys.
God, I hate it.
There is a super short scene here that I thought about skipping past, but I'm not going to. Somebody tells Albedo that our crew eluded the trap. And Albedo is psyched to hear the song, and he does his laughing maniacally thing. And all this time, he's also holding and petting a dead Realian 100 series, a dead Kirschwasser. Insane. Mm-hmm. Like, I really love how they characterize Albedo in this game. I think they do a great job. Speaking of the song, our crew on the ship begin to hear it. Well, right now we think everybody can hear it. That's not the case. Junior and Guinan immediately recognize it. So does Chaos, who is very upset about it. Like, I think he stands up and he's like, no! He's extremely concerned about this. There is a super quick aside of Wilhelm, the CEO of Vector, speaking with... It's the Black Testament, and I'm going to explain what that is in a second. And Wilhelm says, so it begins. And this is where Gnosis begin to appear and start attacking the Federation ship and the Kukai precincts. We've got to evacuate some civilians. The Testaments, they are these like hooded figures that are wearing like half of a Plague Doctor mask. Like, it's not quite as long, but it looks almost identical to Plague Doctor. The Black Testament is all in black. The blue is all in blue. There are a couple of them. I actually don't know how many. I don't think we learn that in this game, but we learn more about one of them a little bit later. It raises a lot of questions.
Yes.
But for now, it is time to evacuate some civilians from the Kukai Foundation.
Yeah.
This took a minute. And like, you don't have to go and do it right away. You can do side stuff, like go shopping if you want, which always cracks me up in games like this. Like in The Witcher, when the Dark Hunt is coming, you can just go and play Gwent, just fuck off.
Hell yeah.
For a while. That's great. But saving these 13 civilians, you have to go around the Foundation precincts and like find where they're at. Some of them are in really creative spots. Like one of this dad like hides his daughter in a safe, and there's another one. This like wannabe musclehead guy is like posing with this cardboard cutout at the gym, and he's like, "Yeah, I thought nobody would know it was me." It's pretty good, but this took a minute. I wish it were shorter.
It's painful.
It was one of those where it was like, I just finished Final Fantasy VII Remake and we're right back at it with side quests that are completely inconsequential with the progressing the main story. So I'm just like, all right, this is fine. Fine.
You have to do some navigating across rooftops here where you can like fall off if you don't walk at an angle.
It's also mechanic to get items.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. It frustrated me in the same way that the platforming in Xenogears frustrated me. It's not as bad as that, though, to be fair.
No. I hated this part.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. You can also fight one of the two optional bosses here, Miltia. I did not do either of these because I just did not want to. I never have. Did either of you?
Not here. I came back and fought them because I had the I'm gonna win summon.
Yes, yeah. Urda Kaiser makes this game easy mode for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So once I had the I'm gonna win summon, that's when I went back and like optional bosses. I'm like, this is supposed to be really hard. Summon. Oh, give me my money. Got it.
Did you fight him, Nick?
I did not fight him. It was I realized I saw this section that was available there, and I was just like, you know what? I think I'm okay. I think I'm just going to continue forward so I can use that next sweet cutscene.
There's Miltia, and then you can also on the Durandal, you can fight Great Joe, who is a throwback to Big Joe from Xenogears. Only he looks like a cross between Freddy Krueger and a gunslinger for some reason.
That's kind of cool.
That's cool.
So we save all the civilians. Everything's great. As our crew goes to get on and get out of there, Momo sticks behind to help treat some of the wounded citizens. And everybody's just okay with it. And you could just tell exactly what's going to happen. And as the scene fades out, a shadow comes up behind Momo. And she never comes back. She gets kidnapped. These next few sections, they're kind of told, not out of order, but they go back and forth. I'm going to do the same thing that I always do and just skip through it. Because playing the quarry taught me that it's no fun to just jump back and forth. At least not on a podcast. It's too much and then. So she's kidnapped by Albedo. And when she wakes up, she's in this like silver hallway and she recognizes it. She says, this is Daddy's place. So Joachim Mizrahi's laboratory, maybe you could say? Not sure. There's another 100 series that's like sort of kind of in and out of consciousness nearby that is able to like touch Momo and give memories to her or like give her experiences to her or something. It shows Momo being created by Mizrahi, and he says, if you do good enough deeds, you can become human. My Sakura. Is doing the good deeds to become a real boy? Is that Pinocchio, or am I misremembering that?
That is Pinocchio.
Or is it just? Oh, is the good deeds part Pinocchio too?
I don't know if it's good deeds, but it's something similar to like one day you can become a real boy.
Okay, it's been too. I haven't seen Pinocchio in a long time.
Also, can we mention what do you guys think about Albedo obliterating the gnosis that are surrounding the Kukai Foundation space station prior to jumping into the space station and then stealing Momo? Like that, this scene kind of like didn't necessarily make sense for me because we're introduced to him and he's inside of the Gnosis mothership, right? Am I wrong on that?
I don't think it's the Gnosis mothership. It's like a third entity.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not the Gnosis mothership. Cathedral ship.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think you're right. Yeah.
He's like separate from the Gnosis. He's doing his own thing.
Yeah. For some reason, I just like in my mind, I'm just pairing like, because the Gnosis are like seen as this antagonistic, destructive force in this universe that, are intent on obtaining the Zohar, and like he's kind of just along for the ride. I realize he's chaotic evil, but yeah, this is why I was a little bit confused. But yeah, that makes sense now.
Yeah, I think that like you have kind of three factions. You have the Gnosis, you have the humans, and then you have Udu.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're all kind of battling for power, and he's on the side of Udu. And actually, this is where I'm going to insert myself into why alchemy. And if I'm completely wrong, just step over me, because I'm just theory crafting and doing the whole entire... What is it? Was it when Charlie has the board? Something, I don't know what it's called. Dave Jackson doesn't much. He brings it up, and I'm sure both of you know the name.
The Pepe Sylvia episode.
Pepe Sylvia. This is me, Pepe Sylviaing. So please squash my feelings if necessary. But this is where that... My dog is just going insane. Why? Why now? Anyway, I'm sorry, Rick. There's going to be some dogs barking in the background.
That's fine.
So this is where I get into the alchemy of the Realians, because what you see in this scene is you see Mizrahi. There's Momo, and she's in the test tube. She's being developed. So what this tells me is that Realians are homunculi. They are artificially created human beings. They're just vessels for something else. So what are they vessels for? Where are they getting their information? You see they have consciousness. You see they have free will. So how are they getting these? Well, if you go back to the Miltian conflict, right? Or I think it was the Miltian conflict that unleashed the Gnosis, and perhaps before that. And I don't know how far back Realians go, but you hear about upgrades. So maybe they're more synthetic. So you still don't know how these Realians are made. Where are they getting soul transfusion and put into homunculi in order to exist? Is that how they're creating the URTVs? That's why alchemy is in there. Soul transfusion into homunculi is central into like high level like mysticism, alchemy beliefs, I believe, in order to put a soul into another vessel and continue to transfer these things. So that's what you're getting with like the four. You got 3 of the 4 names with alchemy leading up to the magnum opus. Who's the magnum opus? Not disclosed, but that could be a possibility that you're getting with the Realians, as they're all homunculi. Now, getting back to another thing with your Realians and what more in terms of the angels, is one of the questions I ask is the central theme of Xenogears kind of like this grand reset for all creation? Because I think Xenoblade does a similar thing at the end of that game, and there could be more to tie that all in. It's been a very long time since I played Xenoblade as well. But the reason I ask this is kind of when you go back to when they find the Zohar in Kenya at the beginning of this game and almost close to modern day. And that's when they start creating these things. It's almost that the Zohar that they found is the forbidden fruit. Ye shall become as gods. So humans create Realians that essentially, as gods, they are creating angels. Angels, the lowest level of angels, essentially do whatever the gods tell them to do. They have no free will. They will just do whatever they're directed to do as ordered by the gods. Kind of like the Kirschfossers. That's what they are. They're just lower level angels. They're almost like cherubs. And they're almost representative of being of a childlike form. And then you have your archangels. Your archangels have more advanced forms. And these are your URTVs, your chaoses, your albedos, your rubidos, your gynoms. I forgot what his alchemic name is. So what these all are is these are the results of alchemy and soul transfer. And that's in essence what you're getting from the Gnosis. The Gnosis are souls that are kind of outside the boundaries of reality. And they're existing in this reality that you see that is represented in this different dimensional plane that is represented that you see within when you're going into Cosmos's dimension. That's where almost like there's a reality there where the Gnosis live. And the Gnosis, why they exist and why they insist on destroying the Zohar is probably because they're in agony, which is a line that does come at the end of the game, which just says pure consciousness being free from the bound of flesh. And I don't have the exact quote, but pure consciousness just exists outside of that with the only agony of longing for reality. And if you take that and you apply that to the Gnosis are longing for reality. They are essentially lost souls. So could the Gnosis be a source for like soul transfusion into Realians, and then failed attempts at making Realians are those zombie Gnosis that you saw back at the hospital with Shion, that kind of merged into that one weird zombie Gnosis? Is that what we're seeing? So if you go into the alchemic view, if you kind of go through it from a resetting creation view, that humans are creating angels and they're essentially creating the battle of heaven and earth and the fallen angels again, that isn't in scripture but is outside of that, mostly in like Gnostic tales, then that could be something that you're seeing, a grand reset of humanity and creation as a whole.
It could be. I like that idea of failed Realian creation, and that's what we saw in Shion's flashback. It does make sense. What we see, Realians being created there makes a lot of sense based on something we're going to learn here in a little bit. So I could totally see that. I would be really curious to know if that's what they're setting up with these Realians. I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea. I think if it's true, then that's going to have... There's a lot that the next two games will have to cover, I think, if that is true. But as it relates to what we saw with Shion and what we saw with Cosmos as well in the Encephalon, I don't think that you're far off, I would imagine.
So I was thinking, how could Fabronia exist and not exist? Because she is a Realian, so essentially she is a soul of a homunculus. Because that apparently is how how Realians are created, is through homunculi. But we don't know how they gain their consciousness.
And homunculi are artificial humans?
Yes. And I got this all, like, by the way, this is not because I read deeply into it. I got this all from Valkyrie Profile, where they say that homunculi are reverse engineered combinations of both humans and elves. And they say elves in Norse mythology. And I don't know if this is true because I didn't follow up on it like a dumbass. But elves are the vessels of the gods, that the gods cannot come to Midgard. They have to be within an elf in order to transfer, like, walk across the plane of the humans. And then why Odin is so powerful, at least in that game, is because he's a half human, half god, which is why he's able to ascend to the top of Asgard.
Time will tell. I can't wait to see what's in store. I'm going to move us forward, though, just looking at the clock a little bit. And
Sorry.
we still got quite a bit to cover. So Momo walks into this room with loads of dead Realians. She begins to retch immediately. Then the camera pans a bit, or trucks, or whatever the term is, to show Albedo holding a dead Realian. And this is where he just begins to psychologically torment Momo.
These tears of sorrow. Surely they are the most precious substance in the world. But are you worthy to shed such tears? The act of mourning the dead belongs to the realm of humans.
You did this, didn't you?
My beautiful little Kirschwasser. But still, can you really call this a corpse? Frailty, thy name is woman. No, that's not right. You little Realians weren't even born from a woman's womb.
That's from Hamlet. He continues, the human race, fearful in its weakness, built this world in a futile attempt to elude the abyss they call mortality.
Why do you think they're all 100 series Realians? Do you think that's just shock factor for the audience? Or if there's any significance on it at all, just to display his cruelty?
I assume that that's just because that's what Mizrahi was creating predominantly, and they're all like, Momo is the prototype.
In that ship, okay. Gotcha.
As he's continuing to torment her, he rips his own arm off. And it regenerates like right in Momo's face, and I think he even says like, boo, like real quick at her. She's traumatized at this point. She's on the ground. She doesn't know what's going on. And Albedo rips his own head off here. Just he grabs it and tears it off. The Japanese version is a little different. He has a knife and he cuts his head off, like he saws it off. There's a lot more blood. I don't know why they censored it. It's kind of more horrifying to see him yank his own head off than like use an instrument.
Far more horrifying.
But, you know, he tears it off. It kind of plops on the ground, and it continues to talk at Momo. He says, he's got some great wordplay. He says, ma belle pêche. There's no need to tremble like that, else you'll make me feel like a péché myself. Which I believe, I Googled it. I think péché is sin in French. That's the first thing that kept coming up. There's also something about fishing, but I don't think fishing has anything to do with this.
You'll make me feel like a fish, my peach.
Yeah, this is all so cool. He then is able to sort of like see into her mind somehow and sees that she's thinking of Junior.
Who is it? This red-haired Rubido. Oh, it's Rubido. Oh, that's just perfect. said while he coughed up his lifeblood. Except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. Wheat. There's enough of it. We can afford to waste as much as we want. Like my head, you see?
I thought when I wrote this down, that Bible verse is from John 12:24. When I wrote this, and it happens like Christ is, I think, I might be getting this wrong. I think this is right before the crucifixion, and Christ is sort of saying these words to, imply his sacrifice. Like, this is for the good of all, my sacrifice. I might be wrong on that, but I wrote it down and I said, this might refer to Mizrahi. I think he just meant Junior, and I was overlooking it when that Junior said that. So Junior is why he said that to Albedo. I'm not sure. Like, unless
he is talking about Jesus because this is scripture, or he is talking about Mizrahi because he quotes scripture.
And in this same dialogue is the same point in time when he's telling Momo, "You may as well be angels. What you lack is reality."
Yes.
Yeah. The reason that I said thought Mizrahi at first was, like you said, Nick, that he was quoting scripture, and he's also no longer alive. So he probably could cough up his lifeblood. Mm-hmm. I didn't connect that to Junior. It might have been, but it would also track with what Mizrahi was saying earlier when we saw him in the Encephalon, sort of seeing himself as this grand Messiah leading the masses to light via his sacrifice, though nobody else sees him as that way. That's almost exactly what happened with Jesus. This scene is insane. This is my favorite scene in the game by far. One of my favorite JRPG scenes of all time. Albedo, they wrote his dialogue so extremely well. Like, it's not corny or kind of like cringeworthy, like a lot of maniacal villains kind of fall into, I really think that, and Crispin Freeman's performance, like, really, really well done. I love this villain.
Yeah, the voice acting seals the deal. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I mean, like, no other game that I played from this era had a villain as iconic as Albedo is in this scene, and it just really drives home the idea that he's going to be the continued problem that Shion and the gang are going to kind of have to continue to deal with as in the following sequence of events.
Meanwhile, while this is happening, while Momo is getting psychologically tormented, the Federation fleet sees all of the Gnosis circling the Kukai Foundation. And that's also where they're gating out of. It seems like they're coming from the Kukai Foundation. And in their mind, they're thinking like, okay, the Kukai Foundation, they somehow finangled their way out of us. They've gone too far this time, and they're just like, fuck it, we're firing. Or they might not say that right then, but
he's in the ship, and that captain is ready to run and gun. He is ready to get down to business. He just jumped in, and he's like, fire at it. Yeah.
His shipmates are like, they didn't give us the orders, and he's like, I don't care. We're past that.
Yeah.
Somebody posits that the Gnosis are being summoned because of the Song of Nephilim, and Guinan says, it's faint, but there's no mistaking it. Nobody else seems to be able to hear it though. And immediately Shion's just like, hey, do you guys hear that?
Yeah.
It's so comical. Guinan is unsettled. He's like, why can she hear this? Like, it should really only be him and Junior that can hear this. Chaos can hear it too, we know. But why Shion, just some random human, can hear it? Not sure.
Well, also the two other characters, the leader of Vector and the Black Testament, can also hear it.
Oh, Wilhelm.
Yeah,
That's
Wilhelm
right.
and the Black... yeah.
That's right. I don't know about Wilhelm. We kind of learned that the Testaments are probably not regular humans, but Wilhelm at this point, he seems pretty normal. Maybe he's not.
I thought it indicated that he could hear it. I could be mistaken.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Maybe Wilhelm isn't just some regular CEO of Vector. Maybe there's more to him.
He has silver hair.
It's true. Before the Federation can attack Kukai, a brand new ship shows up. It's this huge, huge ship. It's the Demerung, and it's commanded, speak of the devil, by Wilhelm. And it uses the Rhine Maiden, which is this huge anti-Gnosis sonic weapon that Vector created. using its 3 flagship ships, the Woglinde II, the Velgunde, and the Floshilde, as well as, the Damarung itself. And it just obliterates all of the Gnosis in one huge blast. It is insane.
Really cool scene, yeah.
And then Miyuki, the girl that works for Vector that was talking with Shion earlier about boyfriend problem. No, I don't think boyfriend problems, but I don't remember what. She had an email about an apple diet. That's all I really remember. She video phones in and she's like, "Oh my God, isn't that so cool? The Rhine Maiden, he he he." And she sends over this little thing in a briefcase that she was asked to send. And Shion's like, "Do you have any idea what that is?" And she's like, "Well, no. They just transferred me 2 weeks ago, so I don't really know anything right now." Love it. I love that corporate incompetence that we all see every day. And Shion goes on to explain, this is an extremely powerful weapon. If we use this, it could destroy everything around here. It could destroy the Kukai Foundation, everything. And Cosmos is like, no, actually, I could scale back the power and just set it to its lowest setting, basically, for it to be effective. So I guess that's what we're going with now, with this new weapon that was sent over. Presumably by Wilhelm, I would think. It's never really indicated who sent it over, who gave the order. But Wilhelm is the CEO.
Yeah, I don't trust Wilhelm.
Oh, no.
At all.
Definitely not.
At all.
He is beyond it, yeah.
So Junior confirms, yes, this is the Song of Nephilim. Mizrahi, he calls it Mizrahi's worst creation and the source of the Gnosis and the destruction of Miltia. So what Cosmos does is she goes out into space and she's able to detect where the song is coming from because it's using some cloaking device, so we can't see it, but Cosmos can kind of pinpoint it. And she takes out a gun, a regular sized gun, loads the cartridge into the gun, and the gun then turns into the biggest fucking Dragoon Lancer kind of gun that I've ever seen. It's crazy.
I love it.
It's
I
wild.
love it. This is some of my favorite JRPG stuff right here. So yeah, you gotta love it when they have the ultimate weapons like this.
Absolutely.
And it gets a direct hit on the Song of Nephilim, which brings it into view. It's this red and black inverted gigantic pyramid. And this is actually this is where Momo and Albedo are. Because it kind of pans to them and it shows everything's shaking and he's like, they're already here, huh? So the Song of Nephilim is Mizrahi's lab / place, whatever it is. At this point, Albedo also starts to sort of probe into Momo's mind to get the Y data, because that's what he's been after too. There is a pretty, it's toned down in the Western release. There's a pretty heavy sexual assault motif about that. That's more prevalent it's more prevalent in the Japanese version, but even in the English, you can tell that that's what it's implying. I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that and not completely ignore it.
Yeah, I think that Albedo just in general is a little bit of he's kind of characterized as a deviant, and just kind of it lends to his overall villainy throughout the entire experience. So it's definitely unsettling at points, but it lends to the effectiveness of characterizing him as not a multi-dimensional bad guy. He's just bad guy.
It's also kind of odd because for whatever reason, I don't see Albedo as a sexual being or he gets gratification out of any action that is sexual. I think it's more symbolic. It's just maybe it's him deriving pleasure more than anything directly correlating to something sexual, but because one of the ways that we as humans interpret pleasure is something with some sort of sexual gratification. It just seems to me like Albedo's not to put sex down or anything, but on a higher plane, where the sex is more of a trivial matter to him, but the sexual pleasure he gets, or the pleasure he gets, the gratification he gets or the pleasure he is getting from what he is doing is relatable and what humans would relate to is sexual.
Yeah, I wasn't implying that it was sex was, maybe sexual assault was a poor choice of words. I substitute in my notes, I put rape, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't use that word.
That's a good comparison, really. I think that's a better one.
I saw it as more symbolic. He's probing into her body to get the Y data. and they're using this as a sort of way to demonstrate that. This like she's being defiled, she's losing innocence against her will, like that sort of thing. I didn't mean for it to be like explicitly, yeah, he's like sexually abusing her.
That went way over my head.
But the context, I mean, I'm
I get you now.
Camp, for sure. Yeah, the context is 100% there. Even from the first scene, she walks in and she sees the kind of the dead bodies of the childlike realians across the board. There is a little bit of perversion that is kind of tonally in place there, even if it's not explicit.
Yeah. Edit me out again, Rick.
No, you're fine.
You're staying in.
Damn it!
So Junior and Guinan know it's Albedo. Guinan kind of fills us in on who Albedo is and why he's trying to go after Momo for the Y data. Alan asks, who's Albedo? And Junior will say, my dark half, the side of myself I tried to hide away. There we go. Yet again. There's a really cool Ziggy moment here. Ziggy's kind of been in the backseat for a little while because, like, remember, a lot of this doesn't concern him.
Right.
He's just trying to deliver Momo to Mizrahi.
He's just trying to do a job and stop being a human. So
yeah, but and speaking of not being human, Ziggy's the first to try to make a move, and that pisses Junior off real bad. And he's like, I'm gonna go be the one to save her. And Ziggy says,
"Don't bother.
What did you say?
When someone close to you is in danger, you lose your objectivity, and it almost always ends in tragedy. I've seen it happen too often."
Oh, what? So I'm just like them now?
Aren't you? This Albedo person. When you finally confront him, do you think you can keep your head straight? If you can honestly say yes, that's all I have to say. But if you can't...
You're really something. You know that? You think you're such a hardened soldier compared to me. Tell me then, how can I become cold and detached like you?
Only allow yourself to think of numbers and battle strategy. Don't let your mind wander to the faces or voices of those precious to you, even when it seems cruel not to. Too intense of an interference will overwhelm and ruin everything. That's what I've learned over these past 100 years.
The day numbers and battle strategies replace people, it'll be game over, Cyborg.
which felt very hurled like a slur adjacent insult to me.
Yeah, that's not very generous, especially considering his circumstances. But, Junior is not aware of Ziggy's backstory yet, like the audience is, right? Yeah, he's completely unaware.
Yeah. Yeah, so he has no idea that Ziggy, when he was alive as Jan Sauer, saw his family murdered in front of him. So he doesn't know. He just thinks that he's being a robot.
Right.
Such a cool line though. Ziggy doesn't get enough time in the spotlight in this episode.
And maybe this is a bit controversial, but Ziggy's comments they continue to have real applications to today's world. If you look at what's happening with current events and excuses people make to save 4 people and kill almost 300, I think that's somewhat like when you lose your mind and you're not doing the right thing, you can cause more problems and tragedy than actually benefit.
Yeah, I think it's sound advice. It's sound advice. I mean, what Junior says holds weight too. At the end of the day, we can't let numbers and strategies replace people. I mean, that has to be, we are, as a collective race, we have to keep that in mind.
It's a complicated question, certainly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we're not doing is we're not taking a stand on the Israel versus Palestine conflict on this podcast. We're not giving like a, we're not doing that.
Rick's going to kill me by the end of this.
But it's something to keep in mind too. I mean, in modern days, how often does fervent emotion cloud our judgment? Mm-hmm. Quite often. Yeah. Quite often. And in those times, it is beneficial to take a minute to keep your head straight. That doesn't mean that we always have to act robotic and this might hurt somebody, but it's the good for the company, so so who cares? It's not quite that, but it's those layers to morality, you know? The trolley problem, basically.
There's always the balance in all things, and I think that's kind of where Ziggy is even there. Like again, like we mentioned this earlier, but he's kind of always been a little bit of the adult in the room when it comes to the different personalities that are in the main party, and yeah, he's absolutely the voice of reason here, and he's my favorite by far in a way from everyone that we see here.
Yes.
So we are heading to our next dungeon, the Song of Nephilim. This is where Shion will ask Tony as we're driving to sort of swing around the top. And he's like, oh, that's weird, but okay. And we see via a flashback that Shion knows this place. It used to be embedded within a sort of courtyard of the hospital where her mother was staying. We see Shion as a kid in that hospital room. We see this place pretty soon, too. I mentioned it earlier with Chris when the Song of Nephilim slots into Proto-Merkaba. That's where Shion grew up, or at least was there for a time. So as soon as we enter, we see Momo slumped on the ground. She's not able to speak, and Junior is pissed as hell, and he says Albedo stole her consciousness. So we're off to go get him. And I didn't really take any notes on this dungeon. There's some like elevator puzzles. It's fine. I liked it okay. I feel very middling about all of the dungeons in this game.
Especially, you know, like if this is a perfect game in terms of like, we talk a lot about podcasting games. A lot of these dungeons, because there's no music, this is a perfect podcast game, especially when you're going through, you're trying to find some of these puzzles until you get to that cutscene finally. But yeah, 100% on that point with you. I was like, okay, so we're doing this again. We got to go through these elevators. We got to try to traverse this next level. So, but yeah.
I mean, also the difficulty ramps up pretty significantly here.
Quite
in terms of the enemies encounters. Like, you just can't go in blindly. And this is also the time I realized there's not like find the party you like and just keep them in there and just level them up, because there's no benefit to swapping up party members you're not going to use and trying to keep them balanced. That there's just absolutely zero benefit. And this is like the dungeon that really encapsulated that mindset.
That's true. Yeah. I noticed it more in the last dungeon, but I also might just be conflating them and getting it mixed up.
I was regretting not fighting the optional bosses for that little extra dose of XP at this point, but yeah, you can still grind if you really want to.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Oh yeah.
This is where I started doing that. We find Albedo, and as soon as we see him, he tells us not to go JRPG on him. He says, "Spare me your trite lines like you're still alive." He says, "By the way, did you ever bother telling the girl? Does she know that you're monsters, both you and I?" And this part is pretty sweet. Albedo is holding Momo all this time, and our Momo that's in our party comes up behind Junior and starts choking him. And she says, "I want the me that's inside of you," and morphs back into a standard Realian. Something that maybe isn't super clear, or maybe it hasn't been shown explicitly yet, maybe it's a later scene, but all of these Realians were always sort of jealous of Momo because of how much attention Mizrahi gave her and seeing her as his daughter. So they all wanted to be like her. And I think they say that to her, I think it comes after this.
Sorry to interrupt you, Rick, but like, do Realians have the ability to like change shape at will, or is it Albedo's casting an illusion on the party at this point?
It's unclear. I think it's Albedo.
Okay.
I'm almost positive it's Albedo doing that nonsense.
Gotcha.
I don't know though. It is unclear. I think it might even be in the database that says that's unclear, but it does morph back into the regular Realian. They kind of all. Momo has an offhanded comment about this later. They all follow Albedo for some reason, like they see something in him, and he kind of manipulates them like that. So they're just bending to his will right here. Junior this is interesting. He says he calls Junior a monster, and we see a little bit of that here. Junior is able to get her off of him with this like red Super Saiyan energy blast, and Albedo delights in this. He says this is his true nature, and he just continually, like this whole scene, he just continues to torment Junior. So Junior attempts to shoot him, and he says, "You mother." And that cracks me up because, like, I would really love to hear Junior say, "You motherfucker." It doesn't faze Albedo, obviously. And he says this: "Try to remember, Rubido, what it takes, what you must do, or have you lived in peace for so long that you've completely forgotten?" So Albedo is intent on exposing these truths that Junior has in his past. We don't know what it is yet. We also learn here that Albedo is imbued with Udu in some way. He sees himself as a superior being. You know, it's like he was saying earlier. He's the telomerase. He is the perfect chain. Here he says, "I'm the alpha and the omega of the perfect consciousness." And at this point, Junior shoots Albedo's head clean off, and it just regenerates again. So we see it again. Chaos. This is where Chaos explains that they're all URTVs, Albedo and Junior. That were created solely to combat Udu, and at least Albedo can regenerate quickly. I wrote it differently, but the data log says that it's just Albedo. I've been talking quite a lot. Do either of you have anything to add so far? Sorry, I'm trying to move us through this.
Yeah.
These scenes.
You know, so the line specifically, which I think is one of the more important lines of this entire game, "I am the alpha and the omega of the perfect consciousness." I've been mulling this over in my head for quite some time, as you know, building up to this episode, and I'm really like trying to think about, you know, how this is relating to our understanding of Jungian philosophy, and his perceptions, or you know what he posits with the collective unconscious, and you know the idea of like what Albedo represents and what he actually is in this universe. And I am curious to know that, you know, is he the antithesis to what we are supposed to understanding of what Cosmos is to this story? Like if we are supposed to, you know, if we're going down the path where of course, you know, obviously it's up to interpretation, but if we are going down the path of understanding, you know, with Shion being this Mary Magdalene like figure, and then, you know, Cosmos in turn being a Christ-like Messiah to the world that we're in, is Albedo representative of a Lucifer, of a Satan? You know, especially with his connection to, you know, Udu and, you know, that consciousness. But, you know, you also kind of think that he might be utilizing the Gnosis in a certain way as this like representation of knowledge and man's pursuit of knowledge. I'm curious as to what you both think on this front.
Well, he's not exactly really utilizing the Gnosis. And this is something that you kind of pointed out, where it didn't make sense when he was killing them if he wanted to utilize them. Because he took pleasure in destroying them.
Yeah, it was an awesome scene.
Yeah, I think there's an argument, at least at this point, as informed as we are, that he's almost like a fallen angel, a Lucifer type of personality. I think that's an entirely valid way of looking at it, as, you know, who knows what he was like, because, I mean, we're given some backstory, but not like the full backstory of what he was like before he was infected with Udu, when he was a URTV on the same level as Junior and Gainem was. And then like what caused Udu to infect him? Was he like, is he being more possessed by Satan? Is he, because when you go to like the battle like between, you know, heaven and the fallen angels or Lucifer's kind of gang, you know, Lucifer still needed to get a gang of angels to join him in order to fight the heavens, which he ultimately lost. It could be representative of that. Is he Lucifer? Is he under the control of Udu, which would be the more satanic kind of value, the satanic archetype? Who knows? But I think there's certainly ways that you could argue it, especially given the information we have so far, and definitely the Judeo-Christian religious overtones that are here. Yeah, definitely. That's how I'm kind of interpreting it at this point.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not wholly convinced that Albedo at this time neatly fits into that archetype. And that's something that I think about anytime that symbolism like this is used is that it doesn't have to map 100% neatly onto the source material. At this point, I'm not sure I see Albedo in that way. Whether or not that's true, I mean, has yet to be seen. I'm open to. I'm not even saying that I'm right. I was going to say I'm open to being wrong, but I'm not positing that I'm right. I'm just. I personally don't view him in that archetype yet.
Okay.
Maybe he is though.
Because he still seems to be under control of others, which would completely blow up any idea of him being Lucifer or something like that. Because I mean, Lucifer yeah. So who knows? He's just, again, this is kind of like the best thing that I think we've compared him to over the course of the series is like Kefka. You know, because Kefka wasn't leading anything prior to Kefka being Kefka. Kefka was a servant of the Emperor, and it wasn't until he gained his true power and had the ability to unleash his true power that he just kind of threw everyone else off. Unless there's someone more powerful than him, and that could be Wilhelm, that could be the Testaments. We don't know. We only know that what we have been presented so far.
There's a lot that we don't know.
Yes.
And even more that we don't get answers to in this game. I've started episode 2, so hopefully some of this will make sense. It starts off with the event 14 years ago. So hey, that's cool. All this time Albedo is like stealing Momo's memories. Like that's never been stopping. He's been putting her in pain this whole time, just stealing her consciousness. This pushes Junior beyond his limit, and he does another like huge Super Saiyan blast, and it does knock Momo away, and Albedo too, but not before Albedo like takes all of her memories, and he's cackling like a madman. He's saying it all makes sense now, and he summons his eggs to him, and this is where a boss battle begins, and it's one of those battles where you win the battle, but then you lose in the cutscene, which is such a dumb trope.
Yep.
So it's, one of my top 10 worst feelings in video games when you do the damn thing and then you actually lose. So I will say this though, you know, I as a sucker for mechs and mecha anime, Albedo, you know, his egg takes the cake in terms of like actual enemy design and boss design. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's super cool. Junior and Albedo have another like dueling Super Saiyan moment. There's just energy blasts everywhere. And Momo is able to step in, and she's back to her old self, and she sort of diffuses it. She's saying, you know, a part of you lives in me too, which is like, I guess that's the justification for how she can stop this, I suppose. Albedo is not really fazed by this. He's saying this is all part of Mizrahi's plan. And Junior starts yelling at him, and Shion gets in and starts yelling at him for destroying all the Realians and treating them like that. And a new voice comes into the fray at this point, speaking to Shion, and it says, still spewing that self-righteous crap. And it's like, it sounds vaguely familiar. I couldn't place it whenever I played this game, but this is from somebody that Albedo calls the new guy. It's the Blue Testament. It's the blue plague mask guy. He tells Albedo, you know, quit screwing around, and Albedo kind of leaves off in his eggs. And as he's going off, this scene is really tough to describe, so I'm hoping by camping on it with you two, we can make some sense of it. As Albedo leaves in his eggs, we get his point of view as he looks at the Y data. So he's got it, or at least a memory of it from Momo. It's kind of not clear if it's a physical piece of data or not. I don't know, but it's like the screen is engulfed in this shifting, shimmering light, and Cosmos appears in it. Cosmos says, I do not exist for your pleasure. And then Shion appears, nude, crossing her arms with her eyes closed in this sort of like mystic pose. And this catches Albedo off guard. From what he says after that, it seems like it's some sort of protective measure. I'm not sure if we're supposed to know what to make of that at this time, but if I'm reading it right, this is in the Y data. Shion and Cosmos are linked to the Y data, which was Mizrahi's research.
And why would Shion be an adult in that Y data?
That too.
That's kind of strange.
Good question.
I don't know what to take away from this at all, other than, yeah, they're important, and things that we've learned over the course of this game Shion's more important than we are led to believe, and like it's obvious Cosmos is at this point. I think.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't know what to pull from it.
Yeah, 100%. You know, and with all of the flashbacks that we have of Shion in the past, or of Shion, you know, in representations of what we're getting from the past, I'm convinced to an extent that we might not be looking at the Shion as we know her in this current timeline. So we'll see. But
That definitely tracks with Xenogears.
yeah. How so in Xenogears?
I can't say it without spoiling Xenogears.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, there's another one of those moments here in a little bit that I wrote in the notes, like, what the fuck? But right after that, we're thrown into a boss fight with Blue Testament pretty quickly. I'm not sure, like, he either morphs into these monsters or summons them. Like, there's a couple in a row, Ein Rugel and then Drumma Waffle or something, some kind of bird-looking thing. Forgot to write that one down, but, you know, it's whatever. It's another win in the battle, lose the cutscene. And he says something really interesting here. He says, it's useless. The laws by which we are governed are just too different. And then the camera pans to Chaos, and he says, isn't that right, boss?
Yep.
Not good. This is everything
No.
is bad. This is not good.
No.
This is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the Testaments seem to be working with Wilhelm. So now, like, all of these connections are being made, but we're not given any groundwork to really make any educated guesses. What he tells Shion here is, come to that time, to that place. You know what I mean. And he says he'll be waiting for her, like just as he leaves. The good news, though, is that Cosmos says, yes, the Song of Nephilim has now stopped all functions. We can get out of here.
That's like the final boss too, isn't it? Like there's no more fights anymore.
There are two.
Why do I always think there's the final boss? Okay.
No, you're good. We still have yet to hear our second battle track of the whole game. Don't worry. There's a little bit of like, we're so glad you're okay back on the Durandal before Junior gives the orders to shoot the Song of Nephilim. The shots get deflected. The song glows blue, and the Gnosis get absorbed into it. And this is where, Chris, Albedo summons this giant, like, landing-looking industrial plant called Proto-Merkaba. Somehow Yuli, Mizrahi, and Helmer are seeing this too. Like, I don't know how they're getting feeds into this and like how they're watching it, but they're like they don't know how this could possibly exist. This is Proto-Merkaba. This is the place Momo was born. From Momo's explanations and the dialogue we get here with Mizrahi from that council, this place was created to discover the true form of the universe, the form our true selves are supposed to have. So now we're getting into like this mysticism idea again, or maybe even angels. Who knows? It is a Realian lab,
Yeah.
Chris, going back to that.
Yeah.
If Proto-Merkaba, the Song of Nephilim, and the Zohar were to link, something would happen that Mizrahi and her cohorts seem to be afraid of. The three of them used to be one. And the song here, I can't remember if I said this, I'm sorry if I did, but this is where the song sort of like slots into Proto-Merkaba, like a Megazord, sort of. It just goes right into the center. It then shoots out this huge blast that takes out almost all of the Federation fleet ships, just completely obliterates them. And Albedo was able to learn how to do all this from Momo's memories, which does not make her very happy.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, or feel free to edit this out if we already covered this, but does Momo have all of the, like, unconsciously at the very least, did she contain all of the knowledge and the memories of Joachim Mizrahi as well? Is that one of the reasons why Albedo was pursuing her to extract that data? Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was right on that point. Okay.
Yeah, that's the exact reason. I don't know if it means she has his memories, but at the very, like, what he ate for breakfast, but like,
yeah, right.
She definitely has his research.
Yeah, his intel. Got it.
Not to like make your point sound like it was trite or anything. I just meant like if Mizrahi knew something that was unrelated to the research, I don't know if Momo would know it, is all that I meant.
Sure, absolutely.
This is where we get the aside that the Blue Testament that we just fought is actually Virgil. The Virgil that we thought was dead. So here's something interesting.
Insane.
As Virgil died, yeah, dude, as Virgil died, remember, he had a glimpse of Fibronia.
He did.
Now he's back.
Oh, right.
How are those connected?
Because he ate realians, maybe.
Wasn't it like, just going back, I know it's been a while since we talked about it. Wasn't like he was remembering someone close to him, wasn't he?
He had, yeah, I don't think it implied, I think it implied that it was a memory, but as he died, like all he said when he died, he pictured her and he just said Feb. And assuming that, she introduced herself as Febronia, I mean, we can infer that they were close if he's giving her a nickname.
Right. So he may have been there when she was getting eaten. And maybe that's
Possibly.
why he hates Realians, because maybe the people that are eating Febronia were corrupted Realians.
That could have been the case, and that would be a pretty strong and convincing argument as to like why he despises them as much as he does, to kind of give an answer to his unstable personality disorder.
Yeah, and it's kind of written off as DME because it's just
right, yeah, because this is the DME addiction, but it could be, yeah, of course, we're kind of finally seeing here that there is motivation from his past.
I also had wondered, is this Febronia's doing, having him come back to life? Does knowing and interacting with her, did that somehow put him on the path to be resurrected?
Did he
Again,
really die?
We don't. That one I'm a little less convinced by,
Sure.
because we saw him get turned into Swiss cheese.
That's
by
true.
Ghost Mode.
That's true.
But I mean, I did think of that. Like maybe he didn't die somehow.
Well, it is the far future. Stranger things have happened in other IP where people have been saved and thrown in a back to tank and come back to life. But yeah,
Sure. I mean, also, is he human?
Good question. Was he human to begin with? Well, I mean, like, it wouldn't make sense if he wasn't human, because if he was a Realian, or if he was something beyond what we understand at this point, he wouldn't have had the DME addiction or the being suspected of being a DME addict, right?
Yeah, but also, like, at the beginning of the game, one of the underlying themes is what is a human. When you get to the Realians and just how they're treated so differently than humans, who knows if, like, oh, they're among us and some of us don't even. It's almost like a Blade Runner situation, right?
Right, yeah, with the replicants versus the
yeah.
humans, and who actually behaves more like a human. Yeah, I think that because humanity in this universe is characterized with a certain level of contempt, to be honest with you, like, I feel like it wouldn't be as clean if he was anything other than human, is my interpretation.
I haven't seen Blade Runner.
Oh my god.
I haven't watched it all the way through, but
Do it tonight. We'll get off the recording, just hang on to it, open up grab some McDonald's and just load that up. Ridley Scott is the GOAT. He's the GOAT. He's my favorite. Anyway, moving on.
We're going to Proto Merkaba next. This will be our last dungeon. Albedo threatens to use that same blast on Second Miltia. Yuli Mizrahi sort of gives us the rundown about how to get into Proto Merkaba, and we're well on our way. I just wanted to mention this. We don't need to camp out on it. At the end of the game, in this last dungeon, and then hilariously in the credits, new things are introduced that are sort of setting up the plot for Part 2, Episode 2. Because remember, Episode 1 and Episode 2 were supposed to all be one game. Like, that was supposed to be Part 1 of the then 6-part story. In here specifically, in just character dialogue, not cutscenes, we get the fact that Proto Merkaba used to be used to treat psychological and mental damages for soldiers of Miltia. And we also, I think, get introduced to the Lost Jerusalem, which, per the database, is the home world of mankind, which was lost thousands of years ago, Earth. In this age, its actual location is not known. I think this is the first time we hear about that.
Yes.
But these concepts are both brought up here, and that's it. They're just brought up like just as a way to tell the players, hey, this exists. Keep an eye on that. That's probably the biggest con of this game to me. They do that a little bit too much in this, and I get why, because of the mishandling of the development. But I mean, the reality still is they do that a lot here, and I can see how it might get annoying.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that going back to the drinking game, we have established you're going to learn about it.
Yeah.
But not in this game.
Yeah. We're coming to our final. I don't really have any. Again, I don't have any notes about Proto Merkaba as a dungeon. The difficulty. This is where I noticed the difficulty was high.
Yeah.
For random battles, and some of the mini bosses here too gave me a little bit of trouble.
Yeah,
but other than that,
considering go ahead. Sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris. Did we mention the fact that Proto Merkaba not only completely eviscerates the Federation fleet, but it also sucks in and absorbs the Gnosis the same way that Cosmos does in the beginning scene when she kind of reveals her ultimate power?
I thought the Song of Nephilim did that, but
is it the song? Okay,
they're one and the same at this point.
Okay, Proto Merkaba and the Song of Nephilim. Yeah,
I might have just not written that down. That might be my fault.
Yeah, they make a relatively, as I had it in my notes here, they make a relatively decent point of it, with the flashback, and Albedo is threatening to use this blast against it, and he's like, oh, icing on the cake, I'm able to, use the Gnosis, this thing uses the Gnosis as a medium to collect the waves from the Zohar, so, yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm slowly realizing right now that the Proto Merkaba and the Song of Nephilim, I am just, completely blending them way too much together in my mind right now. So when you say the difficulty ramps up, I had to look up in Google and get the images and what's going on in the dungeon. No, you're right. This is where definitely this is where you're going up all the levels and stuff like that, right? And you have to go on the elevator.
Yeah.
This is where this is where the game gives this is where the game starts giving you the big middle finger and says, if you're not prepared for battle and you don't have all your items or you're not properly leveled, you're going to find out.
As experienced JRPG players, Is this a common theme or a common trend in terms of a gameplay? Is it true that a lot of JRPGs of this era or of this philosophy and gameplay design do this to the players, where it's it's fine, it's gradual increase, and then at the end they give you this hard wall. If you want to beat the game, you have to kind of suffer through some of these dungeons like this.
I would say it varies. It's not I'm trying to think in Final Fantasy VI. The final dungeon has kind of a step up, but if you're doing all the side quests and you get all the characters, it should be more than manageable, especially if you're trying to get all the magic and through the espers and stuff like that. Final Fantasy IV is very manageable up until you get to the very last portion of the last dungeon, and then you can experience some issues, but you can run away from them fairly easily as well, and they're not necessary. Gotcha. But it does ramp up the difficulty in particular. So I would say sometimes the final dungeons, the kind of a JRPG trope of this era in particular, of the earlier era in particular, not exactly this era, because Final Fantasy X I don't think had that problem, if I remember correctly. I don't think it did, but definitely in the earlier eras, right before the final boss, it decides to crank it up just a tad. And it says, if you did all the side content right now, you'd be fine. Did you do the side content? We really want you to do the side content.
I hate that.
It's kind of one of those, I think. That's what I feel anyway.
And Rick, I mean, obviously you have I think a shared interest in Japanese culture with me as well. And we don't have to spend too much more time on this, but I was just curious, in terms of your interpretation on this, because I'm thinking about Japanese work culture and, so many people, whether they're working in the games industry or just they're salarymen in general working for corporations. In Japan, there really is no work-life balance. Their life is defined by their work because it is all encompassing for what they do. And so I'm just thinking of the gaming population of Japan, why is that for JRPGs specifically such a common trend where it's did you do all the side content? Are you a completionist? And whereas you would imagine a lot of the gamers in that in their culture don't have as much time for gaming as you would want.
There are layers to that question. I'm not really sure. My gut response is that the devs are probably thinking we put time into this, so we want you to see it, but we can't force you to see it like some games like to do, which is bad. Right. So we just kind of give you these hard skill checks, and you will say to yourself, "Wow, gee, I should have been doing the side quests." Maybe, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm not really prepared to do a Japanese culture analysis.
Sure, absolutely.
As how it relates to video games. 100%. Man, I'm sorry.
No, totally okay. I got you.
You look disappointed.
I know it's not. No, I'm not disappointed. I was curious. As it's been on my mind, and I know that like you're pretty studious when it comes to this, or you've looked into it and played quite a few more JRPGs than I have personally. So I just figured I'd just pitch the question in relation to Xenosaga Episode I because of this like steep skill check that you find here.
I think Xenosaga 1 is not the norm. Like most end dungeons do not have this drastic of an increase in difficulty.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's not like there are tons of side quests in Xenosaga anyway.
No.
You can just kind of always have the option to go back through the silver save points encephalon diving to go to previous dungeons.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But you're never like it never expects you to.
Like the only time I've experienced a similar jump in difficulty was Dragon Quest II. And that was because like they were coming up short in time of development and didn't have time to a QA test the difficulty balance in the last area leading up to the final dungeon. So like you're just getting your ass blasted.
Our final boss here, it's actually 2 in a row. So we're starting the fight with Albedo. And he says something very interesting to Junior. Junior's like, why are you doing all this? And he says,
I am doing all this for your sake, Rubido.
For my sake?
Have you forgotten, Rubido? That fateful day 14 years ago? Have you forgotten what you did to us? It's all because of you. Because you closed yourself off from us. Our mental link was broken, and one after another, we succumbed to the power of the song. Left behind in that horror. Did we have any choice but to submit to it? Remember what happened, and repent for your sin!
It's true, I mean...
So you finally admit to it, you coward!
It's starting to become clear that Junior is not... maybe Junior is not so clean in all of this, and Albedo isn't totally unjustified in some of the way he's feeling, but we don't know exactly what happened and what Junior's past is. We see some quick flashbacks, but you can't really discern what anything is. Junior doesn't even say that he's wrong, though. He just kind of doesn't say anything. And then Albedo continues. He's like, thanks to you, I was able to find a new world. And at first, I wasn't sure if I should believe it, but I experienced something a moment ago that confirmed it, possibly the Y data thing. And this ought to verify that experience for me. And he says this while looking at Cosmos, so probably related to the Y data. Anyway, he opens the large central structure in the room. The Gnosis have fused with the reactor here and into our final boss, Sophie Pythos, I think is how you'd pronounce that. It's a mistranslation of a Gnostic text, Sophia Pistis. And finally, we get new music. For the first time, we get our second battle theme in the entire game.
Thank God.
Yeah, seriously. And it's good, too.
Yeah.
It's a good track. I don't know why they chose to do that. I never will understand it.
Yeah, I think he crunched too hard, and he was a little bit too much in his own head on this front, and we got what we got, and we pray. I always boil down to decisions like this impacting the players poorly, as he just ran out of time.
This boss is really hard. I struggled a lot with this. I might have just been underprepared, but I didn't have Erdekaiser. I struggled a lot. This thing can summon other Gnosis. I read somewhere that if you try to go too early with Erdekaiser and deal too much damage, since this guy has more than 10,000 HP, that it'll start using its most powerful attacks like Dark Omen even quicker in the battle. I don't know if that's true, because I've never got Erdekaiser before. But
yeah, the good thing about these battles at the end, at least for me, is that it's more about your character management. Because I had Erdekaiser. I was pressing the I believe button for most bosses leading up to the end of the boss. On the final boss, I never felt comfortable using Erdekaiser because I didn't have like the scan ability, and I kept on. I didn't know because he was in the back row whether or not, or there was some reason I didn't know if it was going to hit the final boss. I was like, I'm going to get I'm going to whittle them down. And I think I had to keep casting like quick or something like that with Shion. So the magic was never there for in order for her to cast it. Or I had to heal everybody and something like that, because it's very procedural in how, at least for me, and how to approach it. Like keep all the buffs up, keep all the characters healthy, manage the turn rotation, manage the additional gnosis that it summons. I wouldn't, for me, it wasn't hard. It was just very more of a laborious effort and just a lot of attention to detail about what was going on. But like I don't remember ever summoning the I win button, just because I was always in some sort of like the priorities that needed to be there. There was always a something else I needed to do before doing that. It was a fun boss fight. I thought it was incredibly fun.
That's fair. It's definitely fun. I think I'll be perfectly honest. This past time I played this, I think I was just trying to speed to the end, which I'm going to be honest is a bad habit this podcast has put me into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
Something that I'm looking forward to, a habit I'm looking forward to kicking. But I think I just sped through this too hard. It is a really cool battle, though. It's a lot of fun. I'm also, by the way, somebody that habitually like rotates party members, so I maybe didn't do myself favors. I was making sure everybody was the same level in this game.
Yeah,
maybe not a great.
Yeah, that'll increase your time that you're in the game too.
I realized way too late there was EXP share too.
There is?
Yes.
I didn't realize that either.
Because I left some characters out for way too long, and then I was like, I left this character out at like level 21. Oh crap, I haven't leveled up this character in a while. Let me go. Why are they level 23? So there's EXP share in this game.
So they're bleeding off a little bit from each of your characters as you're going through the dungeons.
Yeah.
I must just not have realized.
I didn't realize it for the longest time either, but yeah, there's EXP share. Where they get hurt is they don't get the technical points and the skill points and the ether points.
Oh yeah, arguably more important.
Much more. Yeah, I would say so.
So once we defeat this guy, Albedo, this whole time Albedo is saying like, yeah, you've got like maybe 20 minutes before this shot fires off. Now Proto Merkaba is not setting its sights on Miltia. It is like hurling towards it. It's descending just to collide into it. So the plan is this. The plan is Momo conveniently says, yeah, there's a button in the command room that will detach this whole ship into like 30,000 pieces. That's just a normal thing that exists. And Cosmos does some quick maths, and she says that, you know, if we do that, they'll just burn up in the atmosphere, we'll be good. So Cosmos is going to be the one to stay behind and do it because she can run the fastest. The shutdown process takes a minute. They wouldn't be able to get out in time if they were human. Cosmos can move faster than that. So all of us go onto the Elsa, and we're waiting until the very, very last minute. Captain Matthews is like getting really stressed. He's like, Junior, we got to take off. We got to go. We got to go. We got to go. And eventually Junior says, damn it. Okay, fine, go. And Shion is distraught because Cosmos hasn't come back. All through this ending sequence, by the way, they use this really bizarre slow J-pop song with vocals.
It's so good.
It's a fine song, but I was punched in the face by this. Why would they put this here?
They were throwing so many things at us towards the end of this game that I was like, when I heard the song, I was like, you know what? Let's just strap in. Like I was just letting it wash over me. I was in it for the experience towards the end here.
I'll be honest. I almost completely checked out at this point, just because. And it's, you know, like I've been saying, I have my least favorite character, and this is where Shion became my least favorite character. Was this entire sequence, and that's why I was forced to check out, because everything you've seen with Cosmos so far, like she can go through space, she's incredible, she knows what she's doing, she's very much in charge of herself, she very much has agency, she is like almost at no threat of being destroyed. And when she's like, I'll take care of this, and Ziggy's like, yeah, she's got it, and everyone else is like, yeah, she's got it, and you see how distraught Shion is. It's almost like played up a little too much. And then
the maternal instinct thing, you mean?
Way too, yes. Like way too much. And it gets to the point where I think you saw like Merkaba starting to separate, and or maybe a little bit later when they're descending, and you just see her just like scream into the screen and go, Cosmos! It's like she's going to be fine. Like, there has been no indication that she has ever been in danger this entire time. And all of a sudden, it's like every single moment you think she's going to die, but you're the only one who thinks this. Everyone else is like, yeah, we have this like super being android that's just like space Jesus right now, and she's just kicking everyone's ass. And the only one that's like not aware of anything is the person who created her. It was just very upsetting for me. It was like, took me way out of it.
So two quick things. One, I know that was a good scream because it cut out entirely in Discord.
I couldn't hear any of it. I just saw you doing this. It was amazing.
Yeah, you just saw the head waving. Two, and I'm going to admit, this is not my point. I heard this from probably Resonant Arc, so I did not conjure this myself. But this is another area where Cosmos being the Messiah kind of falls a little bit flat. They're constantly putting her in these situations where she could sacrifice herself for the good of others. And she never dies. She always comes back. She always comes out of it perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it kind of takes the wind out of the sails a little bit, you know? It would have been a fantastic reference if she did sacrifice herself and then maybe came back later, but it never happens. She always does this amazing miracle to save others in a way that could have sacrificed herself, and she's always like spotless at the end, totally fine. And we're going to see that here like right now. She is successful in like, what do you call it? Disengage button in the control room with Proto Merkaba. It is falling to pieces. The Elsa is flying away. It's getting damaged by all this debris, and it's in danger of falling through the atmosphere. Cosmos eventually, like, Nephilim speaks to Shion and says, like, see with your heart, which lets Shion see exactly where Cosmos is. It's kind of weird. But, so Shion tells Tony, well, she tells Matthews, hey, swing by this exact coordinate. And Matthews is like, what the hell? No way. But Tony kind of takes over and he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And we see Cosmos kind of just blast through the wall and towards the ship. Shion reaches out to grab her in a feat of inhumane strength because Cosmos is like 20 tons. And Shion can just one-arm her. Not entirely. I mean, Ziggy comes out to help too.
He comes and helps her out.
But even still, the fact that Cosmos grabbed her, Shion grabbed her and wasn't just immediately pulled off the ship. I mean, Shion is like the Hulk times 2.
Well, they are in space, right?
Seriously.
Oh, now logic matters.
But the momentum of her blasting through the wall, it would have completely just torn her arm clean off if she was to try to do that. Yeah, you love it though.
It's this whole. I'm not gonna lie. This whole ending is like not what I was wanting from this game.
No.
Really? Okay.
It was kind of fell flat. I don't know. It's fine.
I think a lot of it is, Xenoblade Episode 2. Not Xenoblade. Xenosaga Episode 2 exists. So, and Cosmos is on the cover. So, yeah.
Like, but you're telling me you guys didn't enjoy the Death Star harrowing escape by the Elsa as they're flying through the vents and avoiding the debris and all that?
I'm glad you said that. It is totally Star Wars.
It's 100% Star Wars. Yeah, I love it.
They even have Tony like do the woohoo scream that I think is it Luke that does it. I can't remember.
Han. I think it's Han.
Yeah.
Han.
Either one of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right. It is Han. It's been so long since I've watched any of the original trilogy.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
It's funny, I'm the one who says that.
Noted Star Wars hater.
Oh my god.
So Ziggy helps her pull her back up, and Shion makes the joke that she should put Cosmos on a diet, and I want to just punch a wall. I hate that so much. What a dumb line. Sorry, I had to.
Awful.
I hate to go back a little bit. When she grabs Cosmos, is she exposed to space?
She is in space. She's 100% in space at that moment.
This has happened twice so far, where I think, like, even when you come out of the cathedral, when she's exposed to space too, I thought that humans weren't supposed to be able to breathe in space, and they kind of made a deal about that.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, do you think that they might have just been like fudging it a little bit? They might have just been like, she's like halfway in, halfway out. The atmosphere is like blowing on her, you know?
Sure.
But you're right. You're right, Chris.
I'll say I believe.
I believe button. Believe it. Yeah.
here's something that's interesting, though. Like, after Cosmos is pulled back in, we see Chaos is pulled back onto the ship, is what I meant to say. Chaos is kind of standing there, and he's ruminating on what Nephilim asked him before when she said, "What will you do?" And that's when Cosmos walks in, and he's shocked to see her. And he says, this quote means something new to me now, after the spoiler, but I'm not going to spoil it for anybody else. He sees Cosmos, and he says, "You're," like he's about to say, maybe "you're alive," or "you're Cosmos," or maybe something else. And she says as she walks away, her eyes are blue at this point, I think. Or no, not yet. She walks away and she says, "Relinquish your pain unto me." I know this is not an explicit quote from the Bible because I Googled it, and that's what gave me the big spoiler. So don't Google that. I might actually cut that out. But it's certainly a very Messiah-like thing to say. And what's interesting, too, is that I made the mistake. Her eyes aren't blue here. They turn blue in a moment. The last time her eyes were blue, she said, "Will feeling pain make me complete?" I don't know if there's any connection there, but that's what she said last time. And now, even though we don't see it, we know coming in a few minutes, she turns into blue-eyed Cosmos. She's talking like that again. They might be connected.
Yeah, I definitely think there's 110% some kind of connection there. But like, do we think that the course of the events that it's taking place in this game so far, first of all, obviously is predetermined by some greater scheme or some greater force that has a hand in this universe? And then like the second part to that question is like, do you think that this is the course of events is a vessel for Cosmos's ascendancy into being a higher being, or transcendence rather?
Ooh, let me chew on that for a second. To the latter, probably.
Okay.
I would think so. I mean, Cosmos's role in this is functionally the main character. Mm-hmm. I think everything that's happening is somehow, it's always connected to her. Mm-hmm. Whether it's determinist, that I don't know.
Yeah, there's still a lot of mysteries for her. That we do know.
Yeah.
And certainly a lot of mysteries for Chaos, which is unfortunate because they do not develop in this game at all.
Yeah, at all.
At this point, the Elsa has been like smacked with so much debris. It's now like crashing and sinking into the atmosphere. They're going to crash land. And this is another instance where Cosmos, quote unquote, sacrifices herself. She hops out of the ship and she says, "I will shield the Elsa with using my energy shield. Like, this will be no problem. I can do that." So that's probably what she meant when she said, "Relinquish your pain unto me," I guess. And this is where we explicitly see her eyes are blue again, too. And she unleashes her shield, covers the ship in white angel wings, kind of like what Chaos has during some of his attacks. Mm-hmm. And we get several quick shots in succession here, including Chaos, who before, by the way, his hands were glowing gold for some reason. I don't know why. But I forgot to note it back there. But we see Chaos, we see Nephilim, we see Wilhelm, and we see fucking Abel from Xenogears.
What? Like a completely a character unrelated to this universe as of yet?
It is a character we've never seen in this game so far, but is a character in Xenogears. And it is that character. Like, there's no mistaking it.
They were betting that not that many people would make it to this final cutscene, weren't they? That's really where they were.
I think they were betting that this wouldn't have been the end of the game. Like, it's so clear. Like, I think that's why this ending is so, like, it just kind of happens. And they're introducing all of this new stuff right here. It's because this was never intended to be the stopping point. Introducing Abel from Xenogears. That's not a spoiler in and of itself if you don't go and Google it, everybody. If you Google Abel from Xenogears, you're going to get spoiled on Xenogears. So don't do that. But that's who this is. Crazy.
And it is.
Are you looking at it now?
I am like looking at the most spoiler-free thing I can look at. I'm not diving deeper, but yes, it is him. Not even like jokingly, it is him.
Yeah, I can't even begin to think of why they're showing him in this moment. So as we'd all expect, the Elsa's okay. Cosmos, after we're in the atmosphere safely, Cosmos is like standing on the ship's exterior. And then the credits roll. We go back to the like guitar J-pop vocal music, and we get some credit scenes. This is where I started cracking up. I couldn't believe they were doing this. So the first scene is pretty innocuous. It's Jin Uzuki, who we meet in the first hour of Xenosaga 2. He's visiting a grave. Is this original Cosmos' grave? Is it Kevin's grave? Is it someone else? No idea. We see Guinan filling in Helmer on Albedo. Albedo says basically everything's going according to plan. We see a Red Testament reporting to Wilhelm, who says, like, Albedo is gate jumping. Is that okay? And Wilhelm says, yes, that's fine, because Albedo is the only one who can open the door to Abel's Ark. He's just a key, but so aren't we all. And that's the last scene of this game. Credits. I cannot believe they're introducing Abel's Ark during the credits. I don't know what that is, by the way. That's not like something that comes up right away in Xenosaga 2. I have no idea what this is.
Yeah.
Now, looking at the just looking at the cutscene itself for this game, is Abel, is he the child with the blocks in the white shot? Okay.
And I think, if memory serves, that was the exact first pose we saw him in Xenogears. I think.
You're gonna make me play Xenogears again.
And you'll hate it. I know you don't like that game.
No, I don't. I probably will when I replay it, but I won't admit it.
How long? Well, I could just how long to beat it, but do you have off the top of your mind like the general what that hour investment would be for a Xenogears game?
I want to say 40 to 50 hours, right, 40. Chris?
So kind of about the same as this.
You do know I've never beaten the game, right? I made it like halfway through.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I made it. I don't. If I get to the point again, I'll let you know. Yeah, but I never beat it. But it's shorter than you'd think it would be. I think a lot of that is just tainted by what Xenoblade has been, because Xenoblade is a 100+ hour game if you invest in it. So you look back at like Xenogears, which was considered to be a long game at the time, but it's really more like a 40 to 60 hour game, I would say.
Still a long game in my book.
Yeah, well, it still is a long game, but comparatively to like the Persona games, Xenoblade, it's not
infinitely smaller.
Yeah,
for sure.
And from what I understand, Episode 2 is like 20 to 25 hours, according to Chris from a Novel Console.
Of Xenosaga? Okay.
Yeah, Xenosaga Episode 2 is supposed to be like 20, 25 hours.
Yeah, it's much shorter. But, I mean, that's the end of the game. We're still left with so many questions, not just the questions of what is Abel's Ark and why is Abel there. We don't know anything about Chaos. We don't know what Junior's past is, or Shion's for that matter. We don't know what Wilhelm's role is. I think in the first episode I said that this wraps up locally fine, but still leaves the global plot open. I'm recanting that. This doesn't wrap up really in any way. It really just leaves us with more questions.
Yeah, I think like in terms of where you were going with it is the idea that the party was essentially able to foil Albedo's plan to decimate Second Miltia and avoid the Miltian conflict from, recurring in the way that it did. But it also like ends in like unspeakable horror and tragedy. The entire like Federation fleet has been obliterated. The party is kind of like left into doubt or question because like everything that we learn from Albedo at the end of the game is kind of unsettling the stability of, Junior and what he means. And like Momo we don't really know, is she still complete? Or is she broken by her experience of what Albedo did to her through extracting the Y data? There's questions and questions here.
And they stopped him at that point, but I mean, Albedo says this is all going according to plan. So what did we really stop?
The mustache twirler.
It's true.
He is Kuja. No matter what things that may foil my plan, everything is going according to plan. I hope it's not that. God, I hope it's not that.
Who's Kuja, Chris?
Final Fantasy 9.
Final Fantasy 9?
Final Fantasy 9.
I never played it.
I thought you were like...
Yeah.
I thought you were jokingly asking me that. Yeah,
I've never played 9.
Yeah, it's a villain from Final Fantasy 9. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm looking at these. This is a cool character design.
Yeah, he's the sexy one.
Yes.
He's giving me a lot of Sephiroth vibes with the gray hair.
So we've reached the end. Do either of you have any... I know you both have finished the game long ago. Do you have did getting to the end change your opinion on anything that you had thought starting out?
That's a good question. I think that when I started, I think it subverted my expectation to the extent that like I was expecting more, at least encapsulated finality of this experience, of this story, and that, that we would get some type of resolution, or we would get some semblance of a resolution for the different character arcs where they would acknowledge where they were at the beginning of the game and then where they ended after the entire party had made it this far. But it's just, I think that to your point, Rick, I think that it was unfulfilling for me. It was unfulfilling in terms of the narrative structure to kind of see, they allude to so much here. They allude to a lot of like, where this direction might be going. They're leaving breadcrumbs, as you had stated earlier, but unfortunately that they're just, it was largely unsatisfying because like I expected maybe a little bit more character growth from the various characters, and they, for the most part, largely stay static. It seems that the philosophical undertones throughout this game are what evolve and change as you progress through the narrative.
I actually was, in terms of the narrative, I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum of Nick here. In terms of this narrative, I was like, I'm ready to play episode 2 as soon as I can. I haven't yet, but that's because of a couple reasons. One, I've been told that episode 2 is a drudge to get through. I still intend on playing it to find out for myself. I don't want to be like, yeah, it sucks, because I haven't played it. I can't make that determination. But the other thing is that at the end of episode 1 here, like the gameplay started being a bit of a drudge, and it started kind of getting in the way, and as a lot of dungeons did in terms of advancing the narrative, because I found myself enjoying the game far more when it was in cutscenes than when I was actually trying to play it as your standard RPG. And that's kind of where it fell short for me. So when I got to the end, like, I did think it was cheesy, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to Shion's reaction, when it comes to Cosmos, and a lot of the suspend your disbelief for this, please, just so we can keep the plot moving. That kind of got on my nerves. And actually kind of talking about it as we went through, I didn't realize how many hanging threads they left and how often they did, and just how lost I got in the plot and trying to keep track of all the characters they keep throwing at you, and just assuming that you're keeping track of what the game is trying to tell you, because it's a lot. It's a lot to ask of a player unless you're truly invested. But I am still looking forward to playing the second one. It's just that in terms of actually playing it as a game, that's where I have my questions, and that's mostly because of how it just kind of ended in terms of its gameplay structure and what it expected of the player in terms of gameplay in the final 2 dungeons. It just was not very intriguing, and it just struck me as more of a vehicle to tell a story, which is fine because RPGs do that all the time. But it was just like it really did feel like a trudge in terms of playing the game in and of itself.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that. I mean, I've said it from the first episode. I love this game, but it is very, very, very imperfect. Mm-hmm. I have actually heard from a lot of fans. Well, maybe not a lot, but there are plenty of people that say, like, yeah, just watch the cutscenes of 2 on YouTube because, and I don't know, I don't love the battle system so far of 2, but it's fine. Like, it's not horrible.
It's not the worst thing you've ever played.
No, the voice acting by and large and the new animation style are far and away the worst parts of the game so far. They look so stupid. And I've shared some pictures with you guys.
I hate that.
Yeah, it looks bad.
Yeah. and to your point, Chris, is that exactly like as you were saying, where I was getting at was that, the end of this game, it feels like the ending of the episode of The Sopranos, and you can't wait to just play the next one. But I don't particularly know how many years it was in between episode 1 and episode 2. So I can only imagine for fans of the franchise in the time it was released, we're just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
They
did get, I mean, the fact that it has an episode 1 tagline to it,
they get the expectation.
Yeah, the expectation was there's going to be more. And I think this is also a game that was very much targeted at people of in the know that followed video game news and had heard about it. And
yeah,
it had come out that the plans for this series was to be that 6-episode series if you were keeping up with it. That's I feel like that's who the game was targeted to. This was definitely not a game targeted towards more casual fans, probably much to Bandai Namco's, or well, just at the time, Namco's, disagreement.
Chagrin.
Chagrin. Yeah, it's a better word. I was looking for something, but
yeah.
Chagrin is a better word. But yeah, this was definitely made for fans of Xenogears. That's what it felt like when this game came out at the time. So I could understand that if the expectation was, hey, you made it to the end of episode 1, we have episode 2 coming. And yeah, I could remember that was the vibe. That was definitely the vibe.
2.5 years, by the way, is how long it was roughly between each game. And then in 2006, Xenosaga 1 and 2 got released as a sort of a reworking combo game on the Nintendo DS. Japanese only, though. But yeah, we've made it to the end. I'm glad that we did this. I still love this game. I'm looking forward to going through the rest of the series. I'm probably going to play some of episode 2 tonight.
Hell yeah.
Now that we've made it to the end, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I want to say especially thank you to the two of you for joining me. I did the thing that I like to do when people give me tons of their time and gift you both some Steam games. So go forth and enjoy. I'm happy to do so, especially considering how much of your time you've given. Jeez Louise.
You're too kind, Rick, and the pleasure has been all mine to be on this show. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah, same, definitely. And while I did enjoy the Steam game, it was completely unnecessary because this was the enjoyment right here. Like recording with you, talking with you, this has been a blast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. So now, I said the last couple of episodes that we were saving it till now, the big self-promos. So give us in. Why don't you go first, Nick? Tell us all about Friday Night Gamecast.
Absolutely. So Friday Night Gamecast is, it is a variety podcast hosted by myself and my co-host Will. We like to cover as much stuff in the games industry as much as possible. We've recently kind of pivoted a little bit and leaned farther back from kind of focusing on industry news and rumors and all of that, the goings on about the games industry proper, and focused on more just topical episodes as well as reviewing games. That's something that I have recently, through just my involvement in podcasting over the course of time, just wanted to focus more and hone more in on, and something that I think we did really successfully at the end of season 2 was just review a lot of the games that were coming out in 2023, which was just an incredible year across the board. So we have a couple up right now. So if you wanted to check out our slate for, the season 3 that we've put out recently, we have our last review episode was with a friend of the show, Eric Guest from the Unlockables. He joined us to talk about Helldivers 2, which is an absolute blast. Really, really fun time. And then, we talked about Will's review of Dead Space Remake, which are both really incredible. But of course, we jump in and we try to give dialogue and context and a balanced and fair discussion for the games and what we honestly thought about them. And our last episode we talked about our worst day one purchases, and so that was a really fun one because Will and I got to have a lot of banter back and forth, and to talk about the worst thing, the games that we really regretted jumping into day one. We were fooled by both GameStop and the games industry as a whole, so that's definitely a fun one to check out. But yeah, if you want to reach us, we are Friday Night Gamecast on all podcasting platforms. And if you want to find us on Twitter and interact with us directly, we are at FNGC Pod.
Very cool. Very, very cool. I don't know that I have any true regret day one purchases. My brain went to Final Fantasy 16, but I don't regret playing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine. The spoiler. It was the Battlefront games, like the new Battlefront games from Motive Studios. That's just
even those. I had fun playing the mission. There's like a local multiplayer missions one that you can do. I had fun with those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. You can find all of that and more in the episode description. Chris, how about Retro Hangover?
Thanks, Rick. Retro Hangover is where me and my partner Shane, we talk about retro video games, as the name would imply. We used to drink beer. The hangover part's mostly gone. I mean, I am usually inebriated in some sense of the word. Hopefully in other ways in the future, but I won't get into that. That doesn't matter because we talk about games that are usually... No, we usually talk about games that are over 10 years old, but sometimes we do a profile on a console or maybe a personality. We also have our flight episodes, which we give our top fives based on topics that the patrons suggest and vote on, which have led to some interesting comments on YouTube, which are always great. So you can go check that out, and you can find all that stuff over at linktr.ee/retrohangover. That's where you can find all our contents. And lastly, we have a big podcast collaborative effort called The King of Games, and that is going on right now. So if you want to find out which game we think is the best of 1996, or just you want to hear us battle it out about games that came out in 1996 and which ones we think are better, that's going on right now. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work and effort from a bunch of different people from all over the podcasting and media creating sphere. So if you're interested in that, yeah, go give that a listen. And maybe you might be hearing Rick on something like that in the near future. Who knows? You never do know. But thanks again so much, Rick, for having me on. It was a pleasure talking about this. And yeah, just thank you.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine for both of you. And co-sign, check out both Friday Night Gamecast and Retro Hangover. Both excellent shows. You can find all of that in the show notes here in the description. You can also find all of our stuff there as well. And I think this series has gone on long enough. I think we can just cut it here. So as always, I am Rick. I'm your host. Thanks for sticking around. We'll see you next time.